ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जना शलाकया चक्षुर्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namah. Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Krityam Rapayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Mayataya Taravo Binedus Tam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parara Lakshay Kiptashtakamari Tarangamadye Kripamaitam Sharanam Papanna Prende Namaste Charanarvindam Tave Vasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Pancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, we are preparing to celebrate the appearance day of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And starting tomorrow will be the beginning of the parikram to the 9 islands of Sri Navadvip Dham. First, the Sankalpa, one day, and then after that, following 5 or 6 days, we'll be going place to place. So I thought for these 2 days, we could hear summaries of the 3rd and 4th chapter of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrta, which describe the purpose for the Lord's descent. Right? What Srila Prabhupada calls the external reason and the internal reason. What he came to distribute and what he came to experience. But as we've mentioned before, these are intertwined. Right? So I'm going to begin by offering humble obeisance under the lotus feet of our beloved gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padma Nitya Lila Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Padasta Talasat Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and Sri Guru Pada Padma Nitya Lila Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Pad Asta Talasat Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, under our exalted Rupanuga Guru Varga, and to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. Also, today is the disappearance day of Sri Srimad Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Goswami Maharaj, who was a very dear friend of our Srila Prabhupada. Early on, when Srila Prabhupada was just acquiring land, he was very close and friendly. And at this point, not all the God brothers were. There, Gaudiya Math was very conservative, which is fine. And so not everybody was completely comfortable with the devotees that Srila Prabhupada was bringing over. We were kind of like barbarians, and our habits and our practices were very low grade at that time. But we were under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada, and he compensated for that. The devotional sentiments were there, but the details of proper behavior in Vaishnava culture, having been raised in the West, in the ghastly culture of America, nobody knew these things. So this caused some misunderstanding and concern But Bhaktivedanta Puri very early on was very close with Srila Prabhupada, and he had invited Srila Prabhupada to come to Puri for the inauguration of his mat there, which Srila Prabhupada did with 15 disciples, and they were there for some weeks, I believe a couple of weeks, and by all accounts, they were received very warmly. It was a very wonderful experience. And Srila Prabhupada reciprocated when it came time to establish the cornerstone, the installation of Anantadev for his temple in Mayapur. He invited Bhaktivedanta Puri Maharaj, who came and was with him in the pit for the installation. Very high-grade honor to offer him that, and apparently they were very close and affectionate. And Bhaktivedanta Puri was received nicely over the years by ISKCON. He went to different Rath Yatras, he traveled in the West, and he, in fact, opened many temples in the West, which are operating now, very high class, very clean, very nicely run, very high quality behavior of the devotees. Really excellent. I believe he was Harinam disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, and then he got Diksha from someone else after the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada. I don't remember the details. But our Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj always showed him great respect and honor, and during the parikram we would visit his places and visit with him as well. Very, very wonderful devotee, and his three chief disciples are traveling and preaching to this day. The head, the person, the devotee who became the Acharya was Vishnu Maharaj. There was one other, I can't remember his name, and then there was Bhaktiswarup Sridhar Maharaj, who travels a great deal and is very well received by the Vaishnavas around the world as well. So, this is his disappearance day. We remember and honor and seek his blessings, especially now. Personality like that, he was disappearing just before these activities to enter into Mahaprabhu's Lila at a very appropriate time, right? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read some verses from chapter 3 and some purports of Srila Prabhupada, but also read his summary. In the beginning of each of these chapters, he gives a overview and summary of the important points. So, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur did. So he says, let me make it a little bigger. There we go. In this chapter, the author has fully discussed the reason for the descent of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, after displaying his pastimes as Lord Krishna, thought it wise to make his advent in the form of a devotee, to explain personally the transcendental mellow reciprocations of service and love between himself and his servants, friends, parents, and fiancés. I love that word, fiancé, which is not wrong. In the Gopal Champu, later on, there was a pastime where Krishna does indeed marry all these gopis. There are different prakosh, different places in Goloka Vrindavan where these mellows can be experienced. They all had the self-conception of being Krishna's beloved, and in fact had done vows to acquire him as their husband. So no harm in that. And it also makes it more accessible to people who can't understand the idea of Parakya Bhav, the transcendental glory of that. So, according to the Vedic literature, the foremost occupational duty for humanity in this age of Kali is Nam Sankirtan, or congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord. The incarnation for this age especially preaches this process. But only Krishna himself can explain the confidential loving service performed in the four principal varieties of loving affairs between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Lord Krishna therefore personally appeared with his plenary portions as Lord Chaitanya. As stated in this chapter, only for this purpose did Lord Krishna appear personally in Navadvip in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is going to be elaborated on. What he's talking about is that Krishna wanted to explain the very rare and confidential pastimes between himself and his devotees in Vrindavan, because he shows those pastimes only once in a day of Lord Brahma. And how will anyone understand unless he himself comes to explain them? Right? And that also relates to the fourth chapter. He's coming not only to explain them, but to taste them in the role of the devotee. In his Lila as Krishna, he's Rasaraj, right? He's the relisher of all the service of all the different kinds of devotees. Such ecstatic, wonderful pastimes displayed in that way. But as Lord Chaitanya, he is experiencing the special beauty and taste that his devotees have when they serve him. And when we go into this, of course, we begin to understand something extraordinary about the nature of the conception of Godhead that was presented by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The beauty and the reciprocation, selfless reciprocation between the Vishaya Tattva and the Ashraya Tattva. We heard about that just yesterday, that Krishna is the object of love for his devotees. They are the Ashraya, the abode of that love. But for Krishna, his devotees are his object of love, the Vishaya, and he himself is the reservoir of love for them. So in this realm of love, it's a constant reciprocation, each competing to give more joy and happiness to the other. And this is the fundamental purpose of Lila or pastime. Lila or pastime is that agency by which love is experienced and exchanged in infinite varieties of ways. Right? And Lord Chaitanya came to teach that. So, Krishna's Kaviraj has herein presented much authentic evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam and other scriptures to substantiate the identity of Lord Chaitanya with Sri Krishna himself. He has described bodily symptoms in Lord Chaitanya that are visible only in the person of the Supreme Lord, and he has proved that Lord Chaitanya appeared with his personal associates like Sri Nityananda, Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas, and other devotees to preach the special significance of chanting Hare Krishna, the special significance. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to remember, reinforce, pray that this special significance of this chanting be always present in our heart. So often, at least me, I do my chanting mechanistically as my duty for the day, right? Without deeply meditating on the real meaning and beauty and significance, confidential significance of this chanting. The gateway to the spiritual realm that is being opened by this chanting. The fact that Krishna and his name, Radhika and her name, are non-different in this Maha Mantra. Right? So, the appearance of Lord Chaitanya is both significant and confidential. He can be appreciated only by pure devotees and only through the process of devotional service. Right? So we're so dependent on these pure devotees who themselves understand the glory of Mahaprabhu and are trying to share it with us. Like today, the disappearance of Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Goswami Maharaj. We pray to personalities like that, to our Srila Prabhupada, who crossed the oceans to deliver this to the world, to so many of our acharyas, our Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, who showed us so much of the depth and purport of what Srila Prabhupada came to give by opening up the treasure chest of his commentaries and showing us what was within that. So, the Lord tried to conceal his identity as the Supreme Personality of Godhead by representing himself as a devotee. But his pure devotees can recognize him by his special features. The Vedas and Puranas foretell the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, but still he is sometimes called significantly the concealed descent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right, and in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's just wonderful pastimes because there sometimes appears to be a conflict between the Lord's desire to taste the role of a devotee and his desire to reveal the Yuga Dharma. And to reveal the Yuga Dharma, he reveals himself as the Yuga Avatar. And this is described in great detail in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. But at the same time, he wants to take the position of a humble devotee. And that, in the minds of his followers, there's a conflict there. On the one hand, he's grasping their feet and begging for their mercy. On the other hand, he's sitting on the asana, on the altar of Lord Vishnu, accepting their abhishek and their worship. Both are going on simultaneously. But in his later pastimes, when he's in Puri, he's more and more experiencing the internal sentiments and separation of the devotee. And at that time, Srila Prabhupada in his purports in Chaitanya Caritamrta is explaining that even though he is God, we should not disturb him in his mood of experiencing the sentiments of Srimati Radhika and other devotees. There's a balance there. Right? He didn't come to be identified as Krishna. He came to be identified as Srimati Radhika, but in the early pastimes he shows himself as Sri Krishna and as his other incarnations according to the devotional sentiments of different devotees. But ultimately, as his pastimes go on, he's going deeper and deeper into the sentiments, ultimately, of Srimati Radhika herself. So, Advaita Acharya was a contemporary of Lord Chaitanya's father. He felt sorry for the condition of the world because even after Lord Krishna's appearance, no one had interest in devotional service to Krishna. This forgetfulness was so overwhelming that Advaita Prabhu was convinced that no one but Lord Krishna himself could enlighten people about devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, Advaita requested Lord Krishna to appear as Lord Chaitanya. Offering tulsi leaves and Ganga water, he cried for the Lord's appearance. The Lord, being satisfied by his pure devotees, descends to satisfy them. As such, being pleased by Advaita Acharya, Lord Chaitanya appeared. Right. So that is given as one of the primary reasons for Mahaprabhu's descent. Generally, the avatar for the Kali Yuga descends at the end. And oftentimes the Lord appears at the end of any particular yuga, near the end. Krishna appeared at the end of the Dwapara Yuga. Lord Ramachandra appeared close to the end of the Treta Yuga. Right? But Mahaprabhu appears in the beginning of the Kali Yuga, and because of Advaitacharya's calls. Advaitacharya, he's sometimes called Sadashiv, sometimes Mahavishnu. They're non-different, but both of them have the responsibility for the creation and maintenance of the material universes, and feeling and perceiving directly the incredible degradation that the world had come to. Advaitacharya, and seeing the distressed condition of the devotees, Advaitacharya made this appeal to the Lord. And that's also beautifully described in Chaitanya Bhagavat as well. So now we will read some of these verses in the beginning of this third chapter and unpack the purpose of this appearance, giving some, Krishna's Kaviraj will give some very important considerations here. So, Sri Chaitanya Prabhum Bande Yat Padashaya Virjita Sangranatya Vratad Agya Siddhanta Sanmanin. I offer my respectful obeisance to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by the potency of the shelter of his lotus feet. Even a fool can collect the valuable jewels of conclusive truth from the minds of the revealed scriptures. Right? The minds of the revealed scriptures. So much wealth hidden in a mine. An expert miner can extract the most beautiful jewels from that mine. Right? The potency of the shelter of his lotus feet. Who are at the lotus feet of the Lord? All the dust at the lotus feet of the Lord, all his great devotees. So it's the Lord, and it's also the Lord's devotees who are giving us access to all of this extraordinary tattva. And we can't imagine the debt that we owe to Krishna's Kaviraj for compiling this extraordinary scripture, and to our Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for his incredible job of translation and comment on this book. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktivinoda. All glories to Lord Chaitanya, all glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Advaita Chandra, all glories to all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. I have given the purport of the third verse. Now, O devotees, please listen to the meaning of the fourth with full attention. In the beginning of the Chaitanya Caritamrta, he describes, Krishna, or Lord Chaitanya, as that Lord, as Sri Krishna himself. The third verse in the Chaitanya Caritamrta was, what the Upanishads describe as the impersonal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body, and the Lord, known as the Supersoul, is but his localized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, full with 6 opulences. He is the absolute truth, and no other truth is greater than or equal to him. So this is a very extraordinary beginning of the Chaitanya Caritamrta. First, his first 2 verses were praises to the Lord himself and to Lord Nityananda, and what is their mission, arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gauda to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. But now he's giving, then he gave the idea that the Supreme Absolute is understood by people of different qualification in three phases, right? What does the Bhagavatam say? Vadanti tattvavidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam parameti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite. That persons aspiring for transcendental knowledge understand the Lord in three progressive ways, as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Right? And so he's saying, in the third verse, he said, the highest manifestation of absolute truth is the Lord in his personal feature, and the origin of all the personal features of the Lord, all the incarnations, is Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself. Right? Ete Chanksa Kalak Pumsa Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. So now, the fourth verse of the Chaitanya Caritamrta in the Adi Lila, this beautiful, beautiful verse. And the translation, Anarpita Charim Charat Kuranaya Vatirna Kalo Samarpayitam Unnata Ujvala Rasam Swabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundarajuti Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaya Kandare Spuratu Va Sachinandanaha. May that Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Shachi Devi, be transcendently situated in the innermost core of your heart. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has descended in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before, the most elevated mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. Srila Prabhupada puts that in there, this Unnata Ujvala Ras, the topmost mellow. Other rasas have been described in Lord Ramachandra's pastimes. He had parents, somewhat friends, right, servants, but the full expression of those moods was not yet there because of the barrier that is described in this Chaitanya Caritamrta by Krishna himself, that when people understand that Krishna is God, then how can there be the same uninhibited intimacy? Right? It just can't be. On reverence cripples that mood. But here, and even the conjugal mood, Lord Ram has his wife Sita. Even Krishna and Dwarka had so many wives, but they can't relate in the same way as the gopis of Vrindavan, the intimacy and the flavor of their love, uninhibited, unrestricted by the conceptions of awe and reverence, just pure selfless love for Krishna, not Krishna the God, but Krishna the cowherd boy, the son of Nanda Maharaj. He's the reservoir of all good qualities, and in their pure hearts they see his beauty and his qualities more than anyone, but they don't see him as God. And so, this is what Sri Krishna as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give. Descended in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before, the most elevated mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. And again, Srila Prabhupada says this purport, Krishnadas Kaviraj takes a quote from Srila Rupa Goswami, his Vidagdha Madhav. Rupa Goswami wrote 2 books about Krishna Lila. Originally he was going to write 1. But when he was traveling to Puri to meet with Mahaprabhu, he came to Satyabhama Pura, and there Satyabhama Devi had appeared to him in a dream and told him, make a separate drama about me and my pastimes in Dwarka, right, which includes Rukmini and everyone. Separate them. And when he got to Puri, Mahaprabhu gave him the same instruction. Brajendranandan, Sri Krishna, that Shyama Sundar, he never takes a step out of Vrindavan. Vrindavana Parityagya na padam na ekam padam gacchati. Krishna never leaves Vrindavan, so separate these two Leelas. So Vidagdha Madhav is about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, Lalit Madhav is about the later pastimes. But Krishna's Kaviraj was conversant with all of these. He learned from Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatana Goswami, all these truths that they had learned from Swarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda and from Mahaprabhu himself. And Krishna's Kaviraj distilled all of that and put it in this extraordinary book. Everything is here. Although we can go into more detail if we have the opportunity to read these other books, but this is the gateway. This is the cream of all Vedic literature. This is the commentary by which Srimad Bhagavatam is understood. So, then he says, Purna Bhagavan Krishna Brajendra Kumar Goleke Rajera Saha Nitya Vihara. Lord Krishna, the son of the king of Braj, is the supreme Lord. He eternally enjoys transcendental pastimes in his eternal abode Goloka, which includes Brajadam. So Srila Prabhupada refers back to the previous chapter, saying that in those verses and commentaries, the established truth that Krishna, the son of Brajendra, the king of Braj, is that Supreme Personality with 6 opulences, right? And that these pastimes in Krishna Lok are beyond the purview or capacity to understand by materially conditioned souls. But for us, he says that Leela, even though Krishna's Dham is here also on this world, earthly planet, his Leela is not visible, so it's uppercut, unmanifest. Brahmara ekadine tino ekabar avitirna hanya karena prakata vihar. Once in a day of Brahma, he descends to this world to manifest his transcendental pastimes. We know that there are 4 ages, namely Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. These 4 together comprise one Divya Yuga. 71 Divya Yugas constitute one Manvantar. There are 14 Manvantars in one day of Brahma. Right? So, Srila Prabhupada elaborates a little bit about that and then makes a reference to the astronomy book, Surya Siddhanta, which was compiled by his guru, our Param Guru, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, while he was still Bimala Prasad Datta, right, the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And this, obviously, even this knowledge, this most basic knowledge, was being forgotten in Vedic culture even 500 years ago. So he's prefacing his description of Mahaprabhu's scheduled descent by giving this information. The present Manu, who is the 7th, is called Vaivasvata. 27 Divya Yugas of his age have now passed. Right? So each of them have a certain lifestyle. If there are 14 Manus in the day of Brahma, you divide 14 into 100. I think, let's see, how many Divya Yugas does each have? In each day of Lord Brahma, there are 100 Divya Yugas, is it? Oh God, I'm forgetting. Let's see what Srila Prabhupada says. At the end of Dwapara Yuga of the 28th Divya Yuga, Lord Krishna appears on earth with the full paraphernalia of his eternal Braj Dham. Oh, okay, right. Each Manvantar has 71 Divya Yugas, 71 cycles of right? Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. So this is a little more than 1/3 into the reign of the Vaivasvata Manu, right? And then he says, before the Vaivasvata, 6 previous Manus appeared and disappeared before Sri Krishna came. So now he's going to get into something here. Dasya, Satya, Vatsalya, Shringara, Chariras, Charibhavera, Bhaktajata, Krishna Taravas. Servitude, which is Dasya. Friendship, Sakya. Parental affection, Vatsalya. And conjugal love, Shringar, are the 4 transcendental mellows. By the devotees who cherish these 4 mellows, Lord Krishna is subdued. Srila Prabhupada explains that Shantaras is not described here. And we heard about this the other day because Shantaras is a neutral stage. Because in Shantaras, one considers the absolute truth, the supreme great, and one doesn't go beyond that conception. Right? It's a grand idea for materialists and philosophers, but it's only the beginning, he says. It's the lowest among relationships. He says it's not given much importance because as soon as there is a slight understanding between the knower and the known, active, loving, transcendental reciprocations and exchanges begin. He says Dasya Ras is the basic relationship between Sri Krishna and his devotees. So therefore, Dasya is considered the first stage of transcendental loving service. Right? Because there, in Mamata, right? We're reading in Chaitanya Caritamrta. Mamata, that sense of possessiveness, the identification that the Lord is my master, and therefore in that relationship I have particular service. And in Vrindavan and in the higher realms, that is a very different degrees of intimacy in that sense, that he's my master and that he requires this service. We told that story of Hanuman, that the Lord was so bound himself by that recognition that Hanuman is my servant, that when Hanuman was snapping his fingers, just in case the Lord yawned, right, that Lord Ramachandra was compelled to yawn, reciprocating with that. Right? So, Shantaras, Srila Prabhupada says in other places, it's somewhat impersonal. You offer prayers as a recognition of grandeur and glory, but no sense of personal connection is awakened. But one can come very quickly by good association of those in another mood, Dasya or Sakya or Vatsalya or Shringar, very quickly one can awaken another mood if one gets that association. So, Dasa Sakapita Mata Kantaganalanya Vrajay Krita Kare Krishna Prema Vishtahana. Absorbed in such transcendental love, Lord Sri Krishna enjoys in Braj with his devoted servants, friends, parents, and conjugal lovers. Srila Prabhupada explains, Krishna speaking in Bhagavad Gita, that his descent is very purposeful. That when one knows the truth about Sri Krishna's descent and various activities, he's at once liberated and doesn't have to fall again to this existence of birth and death after he leaves his present material body. Right. He says that in 4th chapter, one who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. So in other words, one who factually understands Krishna makes his life perfect. Right? And he mentions that we also have different relationships in this world. Neutrality, servitorship, friendship, filial love, amorous love between husband and wife, lover and beloved, but these are perverted reflections, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur explained in Chaitanya Caritamrta. Right? So Janma Karma Chame Divyam, right? If you understand, Krishna says, the transcendental nature of my activities, and thus awaken a mood of appreciation and service, then we go to that spiritual realm, and no inclination for coming to this material world will ever arise. Because in that spiritual realm, there is no Mahamaya. There is no mode of ignorance. There is no tendency towards that. One is completely absorbed. One is enlightened through Samvit Shakti. One is absorbed in loving reciprocation with Ladini. One is imbued with the existence of one's spiritual body, Sandini. Our coming to this material world was from a different status. Srila Prabhupada explains in many places, but in the 8th canto, 3rd chapter, the chapter about Ganesh, in the introduction, he explains very clearly that all the jivas in the material world have not fallen from the Vaikuntha planets. They have come from Mahavishnu, right? They all come from Mahavishnu, from where Tatashta Shakti, right? And also, in the 7th canto, Maharaj Yudhishthira expresses bewilderment, but then how is it that Jai and Vijay fell? Because once, one who's in the spiritual world never falls into this material world. Never. So how did that happen? But again, that was a special descent for the purpose of providing pastime, pleasures for the Lord, so that he could battle his own devotees in a very grand and wonderful way. But the 7th canto in many places describes that. Yeah, we don't fall from the Vaikuntha realm. We've come from the Tatashta, from Mahavishnu. Right? So, in that undeveloped state, Vasudeva state of consciousness, kind of neutral, and then and this is also in Brahma Samhita, we have this choice, right? Also Jaiva Dharma clearly explains that. So, then, Lord Krishna enjoys his transcendental pastimes as long as he wishes, and then he disappears. After disappearing, however, he thinks thus. Okay, so here now, all right, Krishna's descended. He's done very beautiful pastimes, right? And now he's thinking. Chirakali nahi kore prema bhakti dan, bhakti vina jagatera nahi avastan. For a long time, I have not bestowed unalloyed loving service to me upon the inhabitants of the world. Without such loving attachment, the existence of the material world is useless. And here Srila Prabhupada says something quite significant. He says, the Lord seldom awards pure transcendental love. But without such pure love of God, freed from fruitive activities and empiric speculation, one cannot attain perfection in life. So there are two things about that. One is that Krishna himself appeared. He delivered many demons, and to some people he bestowed love. But he displayed his pastimes, but he was not giving love so much, so frequently. But he displayed pastimes which his intent was to attract the hearts of the living entities, to become his devotees, but he himself was not bestowing that so much. Then he goes on, Krishna is saying, Sakala jagate more kore vidhi bhakti vrajabhava paite nahi shakti. Everywhere in the world, people worship me according to scriptural injunctions. Vidhi bhakti. regulative devotional service. By simply following such regulative principles, one cannot attain the loving sentiments of the devotees in Braj Bhumi. And this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is emphasizing in the Chaitanya Caritamrta and in Jaiva Dharma and in Krishna Samhita, and which our acharyas have made the point that our ultimate, and which also Ramananda Roy explains to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at his request, that Vidhi Bhakti is a stage of purification, but ultimately to gain eligibility for entrance into Braj, we have to come to Raganuga, this position of spontaneous devotion. And I remember reading that in the Nectar of Devotion when I was a fairly new devotee. Prabhupada was talking about spontaneous devotional service. I didn't really understand, still don't, because we haven't tasted it, but we're getting some conception, where the impetus for service comes simply by hearing the pastimes, and spontaneous love wells up in the heart, and the deep, mature desire to serve in a particular mood, in a particular way, under the guidance of very intimate eternal associates of Sri Krishna arises in the heart. So, he's saying that up until now, Krishna is saying, people are always worshiping me strictly only by Vedic conjunction. Aishvarya Gyanete Sabha Jagat Mishrita Aishvarya Stitila Preme Nahi Mora Prita. Knowing my opulences, the whole world looks upon me with awe and veneration. But devotion made feeble by such reverence does not attract me. Ooh. So, this is a very extraordinary statement. Because ordinarily, everybody would equate worship of God with veneration. God on high, God the all-powerful. Of course there's going to be veneration, but there's a secret here. That as wonderful as that is, and as amazing as those devotees are that have that veneration, it's not the highest. It's somewhat enfeebled. And so Srila Prabhupada explains that after his appearance, Lord Krishna thought that he had not distributed the transcendental personal dealings with his devotees in Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. Right, what were those? The personal dealings in Braj. He was only in Braj, Vrindavan, for 10 or 11 years. And those pastimes, very confidential, greatly misunderstood. If he was on this planet for maybe 125, maybe a little bit longer years, most of that was in Mathura and Dwarka. And in those pastimes, there was majesty and recognition. He would appear in his four-armed form in Dwarka quite frequently. He manifested extraordinary opulence and power in Mathura as well. Right? So, one may understand the science of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada says, from the Vedic literature, and thus become a devotee of the Lord and worship him within the regulative principles described in the scripture. But one will not know in this way how Krishna is served by the residents of Brajabhumi. One cannot understand the dealings of the Lord in Vrindavan simply by executing the ritualistic regulative principles mentioned in the scripture. Yikes. So why do we do it? But he says, by following scriptural injunctions, one may enhance his appreciation for the glories of the Lord. But there's no chance for one to enter personal dealings with him. Giving too much attention to understanding the exalted glories of the Lord reduces the chance of one's entering personal loving affairs with the Lord. To teach the principles of such loving dealings, the Lord decided to appear as Lord Chaitanya. So it's not that we don't develop this understanding, it's absolutely required for the development of faith and for recognizing the importance of strict behavior. Vidhi Bhakti pulls us out, Vaidhi Bhakti pulls us away from materialistic activities and purifies us by the activities of regulative devotional service. Anartha Nivriti comes through that. And faith is made strong by hearing these philosophical principles. But he says that ultimately, that will not lead you to the highest goal. Giving too much attention to understanding the exalted glories of the Lord reduces the chance of one's entering personal loving affairs with the Lord. So that's why we also have to hear about Krishna's loving dealings in Vrindavan in all their phases, including the Rasa Lila, which is why Srila Prabhupada, one of his first books was the Krishna book, and the descriptions of these intimate affairs with the gopis, which he carefully explained for us, so that we would not misunderstand or equate them with anything mundane. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who is the leader of for all of us, he represents everything that the Goswamis came to give. He presented it in the modern era, and in so many places emphasize this rag marg, right? But also very carefully presented all the preliminary stages of philosophical truth, so that in our attempt to progress towards rag marg, we do it appropriately. Like Brajanath and Vijay Kumar in Jaiva Dharma. They were chanting, they'd come even to the platform of Shuddhanam, and they had so much learning and so much taste, but they spent some time recognizing, we're qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti at this point. But practicing that with great humility and hearing higher conceptions and associating with devotees on that higher level, then quickly they became eligible for rag marg. So we should know that's our goal. Don't deny that. Don't ignore it. Because, he says, Aishvarya Jnane Vidhi Bhajana Koriya Vaikuntake Yaya Chato Vita Muktipanya. By performing such regulated devotional service in awe and veneration, one may go to Vaikuntha and attain the four kinds of liberation. These liberations are Sarshti, opulences like the Lord; Sarupya, a form like the Lord; Samipya, living as a personal associate of the Lord; and Salokya, living on the Vaikuntha planet. Devotees never accept Sayuja, however, since that is oneness with Brahman. And in fact, we see an example of these different stages through the travels and experiences of Gopakumar in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the first book written by the six Goswamis, written by Sanatana Goswami, where Gopakumar saw the Brahma Sayuja and even felt attracted to it. It was so powerful. But by the mercy of his guru, the power of his mantra, and the intervention of Lord Shiva and his associates, he progressed to the Vaikuntha realm. And there he saw the devotees with these other four kinds of opulences and the mood of their worship. And they were very satisfied in that, encouraged him to be one of them. But he was pulled to something more. It was not satisfying to him, nor could he fully experience what he was seeking in that realm, even though Lord Narayan gave him opportunity time to time to get a little taste. He would manifest cowherd boys, even sometimes show himself in a two-armed form. But Gopakumar knew he had to go further. into a different realm with a different mood of service. And even in Dwarka, he wasn't happy. And Uddhava understood his mind and told him, yes, I know why you feel like this. You have to be in Vrindavan, free from the restrictions that are here even in Dwarka. Right? So, then having said all this, it comes to this. Juga Dharma Pravataimu Nama Sankirtan Charibhava Bhakti Diya Nacha Mubhuvan. I shall personally inaugurate the religion of the age, Nam Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy name. I shall make the world dance in ecstasy, realizing the four mellows of loving devotional service. When he says those four mellows, he's saying those four mellows as practiced or executed or tasted in Vrindavan. Right? That's what he's saying, in Vrindavan. I'm coming to teach that. He says, I shall accept the role of a devotee, and I shall teach devotional service by practicing it myself. And Srila Prabhupada says, when one associates with a pure devotee, and by pure devotee he means a resident of Vrindavan, he becomes, and even more than that, he means one in the elevated rasas, sometimes Sakya Ras, associates of Nityananda Prabhu, and some perhaps in the mood of Vatsalya, but ultimately he means the associates of Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, who are internally Manjari servants of Srimati Radhika. This is what he really has come to give, which is why Rupa Goswami is his chosen Acharya, just as Lord Brahma was empowered at the beginning of creation to give the Vedas to the entire world, all the universe, right? For the incarnation of Mahaprabhu and what he came to give. In the same way, he empowered Rupa Goswami with these deeply confidential and very rarefied conceptions, right, of love in Vrindavan as servants of Srimati Radhika. He says, Mahaprabhu says, or Krishna says, I shall accept the role of a devotee, and I shall teach devotional service by practicing it myself. And Srila Prabhupada says, when one associates with a pure devotee, he becomes so elevated that he does not aspire even for sarshti, sarupya, samipya, or salokya, because he feels that such liberation is a kind of sense gratification. This is stated in the third canto by Lord Kapiladev to his mother. Right? Pure devotees do not ask for anything from the Lord for their personal benefit. Even if offered benefits, pure devotees don't accept them, because their only desire is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by transcendental, loving service. That's very telling purport. And through that we can understand later on, when even the gopis in their prayers for Krishna, please return, please come and soothe the burning of our hearts, soothe the horrible pain of separation. They appear to be praying for themselves, but actually they're praying in such a way that they know will give Krishna great pleasure. Ordinarily, they don't reveal their inner sentiments. Love spoken directly somewhat diminishes it. But in the mood of incredible separation, they will express this to Krishna in a most rare way to show the depth of their love and devotion to him. Because anyone who's a lover will like to hear the feelings of their beloved, right? Usually they present them indirectly in very sweet and charming ways, but here they were calling like that. But their motive wasn't personal. It was to gratify Krishna. Place your feet on our breasts, not for themselves, but for Krishna, right? Embrace us, not for themselves, but for Krishna. So, no one but the Lord himself can teach this highest form of devotional service. Therefore, when the Lord took the place of the incarnation of Kali Yuga to spread the glories of chanting Hare Krishna, which is the system of worship recommended in this age, he also distributed the process of devotional service performed on the platform of transcendental spontaneous love. To teach the highest principles of spiritual life, the Lord himself appeared as a devotee in the form of Lord Chaitanya. So, there's a couple of more verses, which I'll read, and then it's just a lead up. Lord Krishna goes on, unless one practices devotional service himself, he cannot teach it to others. This conclusion is indeed confirmed throughout the Gita and the Bhagavatam. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of your religion, at that time I descend myself. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma sangstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants and to reestablish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. And then he goes on, if I did not show the proper principles of religion, all these worlds would fall into ruin. I would be a cause of unwanted population and would spoil all these living beings. And then he quotes himself again from Bhagavad Gita, Yad yad acharati shrestashta tadeve tarojana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever actions a great man performs, a common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. And then Krishna goes on to say, my plenary portions can establish the principles of religion for each age. No one but me, however, can bestow the kind of loving service performed by the residents of Braj. So he's making that distinction again. This is unlike anything previously given, and we're talking about the spontaneous mood of the most rarefied devotees, my eternal family in Vrindavan. There may be many all-auspicious incarnations of the personality of Godhead, but who other than Lord Sri Krishna can bestow love of God upon the surrendered souls? Quoting Bilva Mangal Thakur. Therefore, in the company of my devotees, I shall appear on earth and perform various colorful pastimes. Thinking thus, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself, descended at Nadia early in the age of Kaliya. So that's the first part of that chapter. And it's going to lead us, we're going to be able to see the connection between what he's saying here. I want to distribute this extraordinarily rare love of God that exists in Braj. And it's saying, who but Krishna himself can teach that? Well, that's going to lead us to the fourth chapter, where Krishna himself wants to experience the taste of what the devotees experience. He wants to be like a devotee, because Krishna himself cannot teach devotional service in the mood of the devotees, because he is the object of love. It's when he's combined with the sentiments and moods and complexion and the compassion, he becomes one with Srimati Radhika in that sense. They merge together, although they're eternally separate, that then he can truly distribute that. Right? So, anyway, we'll pick some more up tomorrow. Now, I believe tomorrow is the day of Sankalpa, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll continue on, touching on the rest of this, and then touching something on the 4th chapter. Because after that, the next days, we want to do the parikram, mention some of the spots that the devotees are going to, so that we can do Manasi parikram, right? In our mind and heart, we'll go to Navadvip, or beg to be in Navadvip, and try to visualize and remember these pastime places, which is very powerful. Okay, so we'll stop here. All right. Let me close this lecture here. Here we go.